Hey everyone, and welcome to Get Your Geek On's Marvel Cinematic Universe Retrospective. I'm Robert, that's Aaron, and we're here to talk movie by movie through the MCU's Infinity Saga, 23 movies over 11 years.
Yeah, so expect some spoilers, guys, as we get into each movie. But we'll start off each video letting you know whether we consider this an essential movie for the overall arc of the MCU. Think of it as a guide for you getting into the MCU if you've never seen it before.
Yeah, so there's definitely a couple of filler movies in there. Although if you're a completionist like me, you'll probably rate them all essential. So I guess we'll get into that.
Probably.
All right, so 2008's Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau, kicked off the MCU before we even knew that there was such a thing.
Exactly.
Right? It made $102 million opening weekend and almost $600 million during its theatrical run. Movie introduced, obviously, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Tony Stark, the MCU's first superhero. Not a lot of people would have seen that coming, Iron Man, right?
Right, that's an odd one to start with.
It was. Also starred Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, Terrence Howard, making his only appearance in the MCU as James Rhodey Rhodes, and Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane, and of course the voice of Paul Bettany as Jarvis.
Yeah, I forgot he was that.
Yeah, so just talking very briefly, I do think that this is an essential movie for the MCU, if only because it really introduces you to the world. You understand, it establishes the world, it establishes, obviously, Tony Stark and Iron Man, who is the preeminent character in the entire series. So if you're looking to get into the MCU and you never have before, you have to watch Iron Man.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that one. The fact is, it is the Kickstarter for everything. It kicks off, we get Iron Man, we get, like you said, Pepper Potts, Rhodey. We even get the teaser at the very end of Samuel Jackson.
Nick Fury.
Fury.
Not to mention Agent Phil Coulson making his appearance, Clark Gregg, and he shows up, and eventually, he is the one who is killed in Avengers to bring the team together.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of characters that show up in this first movie, and even something like the 10 Rings that ends up being brought in later. So, this is, in my mind, definitely an essential movie of the MCU.
I think so, too, especially when you realize, now that I've watched it, this is like my fourth time, and realizing how it all connects to everything. Like you said, the 10 Rings, which was a throwaway almost in later movies with Iron Man 3.
Yep.
But then retcon technically in, what is it, that little short they did for
the one shot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one shot, which they retconned it. But I didn't realize, after watching the movie again, how, what's the guy's name from the desert? Not Iron Mangler, the other one, the bald guy that gets his face burnt.
I think his character's name is like Raza or something like that.
How he's holding the ring.
Yeah,
I never noticed it till this watch. When I was rewatching, I was like, he's holding a ring. Wait a minute.
Yep.
And it's a big, thick
All
ring.
about the 10 Rings.
Which was the 10 Ring reference as well. And I was like, oh my god, he's holding the ring. So that was kind of cool to see.
Yeah, so definitely an essential movie.
Yeah. What else?
So when this movie came out in 2008, it came out in May. This was a superhero summer. The Incredible Hulk, which will be our next video that we review, came out a couple months, actually only like a month later. And then The Dark Knight
2 months later,
came out in, I think, August of that year. Is July or August?
July, yeah.
But Iron Man was the first one out of the gate.
Yeah.
And expectations, I think a lot of people were not necessarily expecting this to be super successful. I mean, it was a not well-known character. Robert Downey Jr. Was still kind of, trying to make his comeback. He'd been in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in 2005, which was a huge critical success, but not necessarily, commercial success. And so, there was, I think, a lot of people out there that weren't sure about this movie.
And you're right. This was the first MCU movie. But if we go back one more year, we did have Spider-Man 3. Ooh. We had Ghost Rider and the original Fantastic Four with Chris Evans, who would later become Captain America in the MCU. So we already had 3.
0 for 3.
Yeah, we had 3 strikes. The year before the MCU kicks off.
Yeah.
Before Marvel Studios finally said, let's stop selling our rights out to other companies and essentially they start making them at home.
Well, they're making that movie while these 3 movies are failing at the box office.
So it was a huge gamble because you went from 3 flops to can we hit a home run with Iron Man? And they did. They hit it right out of the park.
So, obviously, publicly, this was a huge success. We already talked $100 million opening weekend. But how about you? Were you looking forward to this movie? I mean, did you know about Iron Man before this? I know you're a big comic geek. So, did you love Iron Man? Were you like, I'm really looking forward to the story of Tony Stark?
So, yes. I mean, I knew Iron Man. Like he said, I am a comic book nerd. I've read a lot of comics. I've read his alcoholism problem, which when the movie was coming out, when I remember seeing the trailers, I was always wondering, are you going to comment about his addiction to alcohol?
Right.
Now, they really don't talk about it too much in the first one, but you do see the alcohol.
They address it a little bit more in number 2, but certainly he is a character who is not afraid of drinking.
No, he's not. I mean, one of the opening scenes, he literally has that cooler that pops open and buy 100 million, throw this in, he takes a shot of whiskey. So, on a personal level, when it was first coming out, I was excited because this is the first Marvel movie. I was like, I hope Marvel's doing it. Maybe they'll finally hit it right because I hated Spider-Man 3. I hated Ghost Rider. And I'm sorry, it's the second Fantastic Four because Silver Surfer is in it. So it's the second Fantastic Four, which I hated already.
Yeah,
and I love Silver Surfer.
It's all bad.
So we're coming off of all of those, and I'm going in there like, man, maybe it's not going to be good because the bar's set low at this point. So first time I watched it, I loved it. I was in love with the idea, especially when Nick Fury comes out. I got to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. And it's just like, oh, wait a minute. They're actually bringing out the Avengers maybe one day.
Yeah.
So being excited. Now, what are we, 11 years later? I'm watching it again. There was some stuff that has gone over, they've overlooked. So one thing I want to say, I think there was one huge missed opportunity in Endgame from this film. And
let's hold that thought. Okay. Because I want to talk about my experience. You're the comic book geek.
Yeah.
And so you knew Iron Man. You were ready for this movie. You were
excited.
You were excited for it, but you were also scared based on what you'd seen the previous year.
Thanks, Tobey Maguire, Nicolas Cage.
I didn't have any knowledge of Iron Man. I didn't know that character at all. I'm not the comic book guy. And so I liked action movies. I liked the first couple Spider-Man movies. I didn't really care for the third one. I was big into the X-Men series, but the third one was terrible. This movie is on the heels of X-Men Origins Wolverine, which was terrible.
Oh my god, I forgot about that movie.
So we'd had some strikes.
Yeah, we've had a
Daredevil, Elektra. This is all in that same time frame. But Batman Begins had come out in 2005, and I loved Batman Begins.
Christian Bale and Christopher Nolan working that.
As we were getting into that summer, and I knew The Dark Knight was coming up, I was actually more excited for The Incredible Hulk than I was for Iron Man, because I knew the character. I knew Hulk. I didn't know Iron Man. But I went in, I watched this movie, and it blew me away. I loved it immediately. I am not the video game guy. I went home and bought the video game for Iron Man because I loved Iron Man.
That's awesome.
It was an awesome experience.
That's awesome.
I loved the movie, and so we'll talk about it as we get into the rest of the movie. Does it hold up? What does it look like?
Yeah.
But certainly, I loved it in 2008 when I watched it the first time. As we get into the actual movie now, we're going to talk about the major things that happen. So, obviously, when we look at the setup for the character of Tony Stark, one of the major defining things is, obviously, he's a genius.
Yeah.
He's a billionaire.
Yep.
And he's an orphan. His parents, die. Now, he's a teenager when they die. It's not the Batman scenario where he's, a little kid.
Martha.
But he's, on the youngish side.
Yes.
And so that really does shape his character throughout the entire MCU, having his parents die. That's a major piece to him. So the movie starts off, it's kind of told a little bit semi-flashback, where you kind of, start off with him in Afghanistan doing this weapons demonstration. The convoy gets attacked, he gets kidnapped, and through captivity becomes Iron Man.
Yes.
And really the biggest thing that happens in the first half of the movie is he realizes that his legacy and his weapons are being used by, I think it's even the line in the movie, he sees Americans killed by the very weapons he designed to protect them. And so that truly does have a very lasting impact on him, and really drives the rest of this movie and a lot of Tony Stark's story, throughout his MCU career.
It does. And, and you hit three of the major points that create Iron Man, and then we have of course, you have to add the alcoholism.
Yeah.
Because with parents dying so young, he's a billionaire, he's a genius. How do you cope with it? And alcohol ends up being his coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's an unhealthy one, which we all know alcohol is just that. So, we always want to be careful with that. I think it hit the character on the dot.
Yeah.
How they created. You're right. I think they did that perfectly.
Yeah, and definitely when you talk about, Tony Stark, so he is arrogant.
Oh, yeah.
Extremely arrogant from the moment the movie begins all the way till the end.
Oh, yeah, he never loses.
That arrogance does not go away. What changes, his major arc, is he goes from ignorance to responsibility.
Exactly.
He's going to now take control. He's going to take responsibility. He has that conversation with Pepper Potts where she's kind of like, I can't support you being this person that's now going to, put yourself in danger. And he's like, this is my responsibility. I have to do this. I think one of the standout scenes for me, one of my favorite scenes, and they kind of call it back, is when, he's escaping and the gentleman that, has been assisting him, Yinsen, basically dies, and he tells him,
oh, that was a hard scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene where he says, "Don't waste it. Don't waste your life."
Chance. Yeah.
And it is so apparent, not only just on the rewatch, thinking of his entire arc all the way through into Endgame with his family and all that stuff. He even has the conversation with Yinsen where, he says, Yinsen says, "Oh, you don't have a family, you're a man with everything and a man with nothing." Exactly. And so remembering that, now watching it again and with the recent history of Endgame, you're like, oh my God, like
it's all
tying together. Yeah. But definitely, that don't waste your life theme is very strong in this movie. He's not going to waste the gifts that he's been given, the money that he has, the intellect that he has, and the way that he's been able to build the Iron Man character. He is not going to let that go to waste.
Right, and he didn't. And again, I'm going to say this later. There is a tie-in I wish they would have done, but I think you're right. I think they set it up perfectly with it. They tied it all the loose ends. They were able to show a beginning and finally an end. But the funny thing is, even later on, he's never lost that arrogance, and I kind of like that. Yeah. That never goes away.
I think the major things that get introduced and a little bit resolved from his character. Obviously, we talked about the arrogance. We talked about that sense of responsibility. Obviously, you really establish that relationship between him and Pepper and how strong that bond is. And really, I think something that I really got on this rewatch is the trust issues that he has. Yeah. Brought about by the villain of the movie. Oh, yeah. Obadiah Stane, Ironmonger, basically betraying him. And, he gets to that point. And it's really interesting because in this movie, he very much, is, I'm going to take control. Yep. And, I'm going to be personally responsible. And by the time you get to Civil War, that's Captain America's position. Exactly. Is that the safest hands are still our own. Yep. And his position, because of all the things he's been through, which we'll talk about in future episodes, he has kind of grown to this position where he doesn't even trust himself anymore. Right. Like, his trust issues are so deep that he now no longer even trusts himself. And that's true. It's crazy.
And I think, on the rewatch, now, I don't know if we're going to count this, but I was going to say it. I watched all the deleted scenes again.
Okay. And I watched a few of them. I didn't get to all of them.
And see, that's where I like a lot more of the deleted scenes because it actually fleshes out Rhodey a lot more in those deleted scenes. Yeah. And that was one thing I was disappointed because when you watch the show or the movie, you have Terrence Howard, who's an amazing actor.
I think he does a great job.
He did. I do wonder how it would have been with him instead of Don Cheadle later.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, and we can get more into that when we talk about Iron Man 2. Yeah. I like Terrence Howard's performance as Rhodey better than I like Don Cheadle's performance. Yeah. And it's not close.
No, not at all. And especially when you go back and because we were talking about like our favorite scenes. All of my favorite scenes were the deleted ones, and all of them had Rhodey in it as Terrence Howard, of course, and every one of them just like he sold that character to me.
Yeah.
He made that character amazing. I mean, I do like the other scene too. One of my other favorite ones, again, it's a roadie scene where they're on the plane heading to one of the conferences and they're drunk at this point.
Yes.
The students are all like stripping and dancing and all that, and the pole comes up.
Yeah.
And I like that it's commenting that at this point, Tony doesn't know what to do because he's
Right.
drinking. It shows that alcoholism right there.
Yep.
You know, and it shows that here's Rhodey who's trying to be responsible and talks about how he puts the uniform on and blah, blah, blah. And Tony's just like, you're killing my buzz. Like, I got to drink.
There's something going on here.
Yeah. And I love that scene because to me, that's where it shows he still hasn't taken the responsibility yet because they haven't gone to Afghanistan. I think this was the flight to Afghanistan,
Yes.
I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and none of it's happened yet, so he hasn't taken that role on, but it just shows you almost how screwed up he is because he shows up late to the airplane and even comments, it's my airplane, so why does it matter?
Right.
And then, he's drunk.
I mean,
within the first hour of the flight.
I mean, he very much, the personal responsibility, he doesn't have any at that point in the movie. He's just, the world caters to me.
Exactly.
That's his perspective. He can, do whatever he wants, say whatever he wants. It doesn't matter. And they really established that really well in this movie.
They did.
I think the movie does an excellent job. It gets that. I like the way they structure it. They put that scene of the convoy getting attacked at the beginning because they know they've got 45 minutes without an action scene after that. Like, they've got to do the buildup of Tony Stark, the character that he is, the arrogance that he has, all of those things. They've got to build to all of that. And so the fact that they're going to hit you with a bang, they're going to hook you right away, and then they're going to give you that whole backstory and then catch up to it now where he's, in the cave and having to, basically be reborn.
Yeah.
I think that's a really effective movie. Not a lot of movies try it. Yeah. Not all of them are successful with it. I think this one definitely was. I really like that, the way that it's structured.
And the good is you had Jon Favreau, who is a nerd. He is a comic book nerd.
Big time. Happy Hogan in the movie.
He made himself a character.
He's in the movie.
He made himself be Happy Hogan.
Yeah.
But one thing of course, my question to you, do you think I even said it, I guess we're kind of here too, does it stand the test of time?
So, yes.
You think so?
I think it does.
Okay.
I think that this movie still holds up. There's a couple things that obviously are a little bit outdated from a technology standpoint, but I think this movie is still in the top 10 movies that the MCU has made. Mm-hmm. I think it is still one of the best superhero movies that has been released that is a solo movie. Obviously, there's a ton of team-up movies and stuff. Yeah. Avengers, Guardians, all that stuff that's been huge. But if you look at just a solo character, this is definitely up there. I would put this from an origin movie perspective. If you're looking at, superhero origin movies, this one and Batman Begins are my two favorite. I would say that those two, and maybe the original 1978 Superman, because that clearly establishes who Superman is. You know who Superman is. So if you look at what it's accomplishing, but Iron Man to me is a better movie than the original Superman is. So I would put it right up there with Batman Begins. And one of the scenes I wanted to talk about that we didn't get to is I absolutely love that entire when he finally puts on the actual Iron Man suit.
The Mark 1 or the Mark 2?
No, the Mark 2 the Mark 3, the one that's painted. That he goes to Afghanistan. He has that whole battle sequence.
Yes.
Then he's in the plane and he's talking to Rhodey. Like, I love that whole scene. I'm jogging. I'm driving with the top down. I'm on my way to jog to the canyon. I'm gonna jog. That whole scene is hilarious. And then to the point where he gets then back to the mansion. And, that's when Pepper confronts him, what are those bullet holes? And, and it's got that great scene where he's like, let's face it, this isn't the worst thing you caught me doing. Exactly. It's just that whole sequence of 15 minutes, even that great cutaway joke where it's how am I supposed to explain this? Well, it's a training exercise. Isn't that the usual BS? It's not that simple, Tony. Cut to an unfortunate training exercise. You're just that whole sequence, that whole 15 minutes. I absolutely love it. It's great from an action standpoint. The writing is great. Obviously, the acting is all great.
I love how you say that.
It's fantastic.
One of my favorite scenes, too, was when Pepper, after he sleeps with the reporter, And Pepper comes out with her
that line.
Queen,
Oh,
hands him to her, and then she's like, and sometimes they take out the trash.
Oh, that
dang.
line is so perfect.
You're done, lady. Get out.
And like, it's like I do anything and everything that Mr. Stark requires, which includes sometimes taking out the trash.
Oh my God.
You're just like,
I love it. I'm like, oh yeah, you burn, man.
So good. Yeah, that's a great moment.
So I mean, that's
and definitely from a performance standpoint. I mean, obviously Robert Downey Jr. is. I mean, he sets the tone.
Yeah, he does.
He is amazing as this character. He is Tony Stark. He is Iron Man. He says it at the end. Yeah. I am Iron Man. And he absolutely is. But not to get lost in the shuffle, to me, other standout performances, I love Gwyneth Paltrow, especially in this movie. Her Pepper Potts is fantastic. She's locked in. And also, I think Jeff Bridges is a fantastic villain as Obadiah Stane. You know, you really get the menace from him, especially in both those scenes where he uses that little technology thing. First he does it to the guy in Afghanistan, and then when he does it to Tony, like, those scenes are awesome. I love him as Obadiah Stane. A forgotten villain sometimes.
Sometimes he is. And I liked it because now rewatching it, when you go back and rewatch it, you kind of see from the get-go he was already the bad guy. Like the whole, he knew. How did you know the arc was there? Oh, you talked to Pepper wrote it. No, he didn't, because he talked to the guys in Afghanistan already, so he knew it was in there.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy how when he's in each scene with Tony, how much he tries to like dominate over Tony.
It's very clear.
Oh my God! Like watching it again, I was like, he's really trying to dominate over Tony in every scene he's in. The whole. And I know,
and with Pepper too.
Yes,
in those scenes,
too. And it's like when you watch his body language, because I know they always, you know, with the businessman, because he is supposed to be the businessman, how they put their hands on certain spots because it's supposed to show I'm supposed to be over you, and he does every one of those gestures they say that you should do as a business tycoon to make others feel underneath you, and he's doing every single one. I was like,
well, that moment where you know they're at the party and he does the who do you think locked you out, Tony? Exactly. Like, that's such a power move. He does that later with Pepper.
In the beginning, before you realize anything, in the arc reactor, he kind of like slams his hand on his shoulder when he's like, let me see it. And it's just like that grip he has. And I was like, wow, watching it again, I'm like, those were powerful moves I didn't think about the first time.
And he also, Jeff Bridges shows up again in the final movie of the Infinity Saga.
Oh, yeah.
Far From Home, Spider-Man. Tony Stark built this in a cave with grass! You know,
he came back, I forgot about that.
They replay that scene. Yes, so Jeff Bridges tying the universe together. he's on both.
Let me make sure I fix everything, guys. I did it. Jeff Bridges saves everything.
Yeah. So the last question I wanted to ask you is, we talked about does the movie hold up, but has this rewatch... You said you've seen it a few times. I've probably seen it like 10 times.
Yeah,
since it came out. I watched it a bunch of times. I loved it. I still love it. So has this most recent rewatch now, looking at it maybe through the different lens, or we're looking at the entire Infinity Saga, has that changed your opinion of the movie at all?
Not of this movie.
Okay.
I think this movie, my worry, kind of commenting one step back real quick, in about 5 to 6 years, I think it's going to be outdated. I really do, because they do the MySpace comments, which that's already kind of there. And there's a few other comments where it's like, if we're not careful in a few more years, that might get outdated. The whole thing with Afghanistan was because at that time we were fighting with them.
We still are.
We still are. That is true. We're always at that point, a war with them, feels like. I'm worried it's going to get outdated. But overall, watching it again, I enjoy all the little moments. I enjoy I don't remember the robot's name, the little arm that's always messing with him.
Well, he just keeps calling him Dummy.
Yeah.
So I don't know what his actual name is, but
he's in everything. He's in all 3 movies. Yeah. I think he even pops up in Avengers 1, one of the Avengers movies, I think.
Yep.
So it's like, I love all the times, and I really enjoyed it. I think if you want like an essentially complete feel, you have to watch it. You have to see everything, and the running jokes are all there still.
Oh yeah, it's
years
great.
later. So
I mean, and I would say for me, this rewatch, the most recent time I had watched it was actually about a year and a half ago. I watched it in preparation for Infinity War, and so to me, it was a movie that I think has definitely stood up and held up. It is one of those movies that this rewatch did not change my opinion of it. I think it's so solid, and I know exactly where it is and what this movie is, that, rewatching it again, even, I think actually I appreciated some of those cave scenes with Yinsen, where they're talking about family, where they're talking about don't waste your life, like, even more so considering his sacrifice within Endgame, that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
So, if anything, it actually possibly made me like the movie even more, which I don't know if that was possible.
I'll give you that. I liked it for that.
Yeah. So we've already kind of talked about it, but the overall arc of the MCU, again, this one really kicks it off. It sets the tone for the entire MCU. Tony Stark, Iron Man, sets the tone for the universe we're in. It's a real universe.
Yes.
We don't get into anything magic for several years.
You're right.
And so this is a grounded reality type of movie. And so I would say for sure this is a movie that when you think about the entire Infinity Saga arc, the entire 23 movies, this really sets the tone for what the movie is, and that's really how it fits in. And then, of course, we talked about the introduction of the Ten Rings. That's going to come back in Phase 4 with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. We don't know exactly how, but that's literally in a title now. Yes. So they're continuing to build off this legacy that this movie established.
Exactly, and you're right. It fits in perfectly. They're going to tie it back with Cheng-Li. We've already had, like I said, the little one-shot. We have the Iron Man 3, which kind of broke it all up, but
we'll talk about Iron Man 3 when we get there.
So everything's going to be connected, though. I like how you said it's never... I think at this point, Iron Man's never going to truly die. Yes, he died in Endgame, but we're going to get other movies where he'll come back somehow.
Yeah, and, as we kind of talked about with this particular movie and this particular character, the legacy of Iron Man is in everything.
It is.
And that Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. I mean, that is an iconic moment at the end of the movie. It's an iconic moment for superhero movies is to establish that my identity is going to be public.
Yes.
I mean, really up until this point, they had not done that in any of the movies. There was always the secret identity, whether it was Batman or Superman or the Fantastic Four or even the X-Men. They were always in hiding. There was never a we're public. And so to just basically drop the mic at the end of the movie, I am Iron Man, that just set the tone for the MCU and said, this is who we are, we're here to stay, and we're going to be who we are. Yeah. We're gonna stay true to our comic book roots. We're gonna make comic book movies.
Yes.
And you're gonna love them. Exactly. And they were right.
I mean, the only one that came close was Fantastic Four because everyone who knew Reed Richards were from the accident. That was the closest one, but it was because they were already so public. They didn't even get a chance to try to hide. But in this one, like you said, there was that little bit of hiding, and then I was like, you know what? Screw it. I am Iron Man.
Yeah, that's such a great moment.
Yeah, that really was.
Again. So it is the Infinity Saga.
Yes.
So the question is, obviously the 6 Infinity Stones. Are there any Infinity Stones in this movie, Aaron?
Nope, not that I saw.
There are not. There are no Infinity Stones in this movie. So I think we can kind of roll right into our final thoughts.
Yeah.
We've already talked about how much we love this movie and how it fits into everything else. So out of 10, what are you going to give a rating for Iron Man? And you can include decimal points because I know I'm going to. So.
I mean, it is one of my favorite movies still. Yeah. After rewatching it, again, I loved it. I feel there's other things that were missed later down the road, which when we get to those movies, I'll comment on that.
Well, I'm interested. What was the missed opportunity? You didn't talk about that yet. So what was it?
So if you watch the Endgame, we know how I Am Iron Man it ends. That's pretty much where it's going to end right there. Mm-hmm. In the screen testing, when they were first screening it, there was a different scene. After he snapped his fingers, he saw his daughter as an old woman. Oh, no, not old woman, but as an adult.
A teenager. Yeah, teenager, adult, young adult. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think you even commented this, I think maybe you talked about it off camera, how the audience didn't understand who the hell she was.
Right.
That was the missed opportunity. Why not have Jensen instead? And then he could look at Jensen and say, did I waste my second chance? And Jensen be like, no, you didn't. Just that complete the whole circle. I think that would have been a beautiful moment of him saying something very similar to that. Because, I mean, that was the whole point. When he dies, he said, don't waste your second chance.
Right.
And it would be cool that he did die, and maybe that the last thoughts of Tony being like, I screwed up. Maybe I shouldn't have died. Maybe like even show a little doubt on his face, acting, of course. But then Jensen being there to reassure him, you didn't waste it.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a cool little throw.
I mean, that definitely would have been an interesting callback if they went with it. I don't know. I'm not sure that I like that. I think I love the character of Jensen, but I like him where he is. kind of like Stanley Tucci, Abraham Erskine with Captain America. I don't need him to show back up.
Just randomly show back up, guys.
So, I think Jensen does show back up in Iron Man 3 because they go to that conference in Bern.
Yes.
At the beginning of the movie, and he does show up there. So the character, we're not done with that actor. I don't know his name.
I can't think of it either. He's not a small actor.
Shane Taub, I think is his name. So let me know in the comments if I'm wrong.
Yeah, someone let us know.
But anyway, so missed opportunity for you. I don't necessarily agree, but give me that score.
I would say a good 8, a solid 8.
Solid 8.
Because again, it's like you said, it has so much in it. And later on with the rewatches and everything, now I understand how it's all connected.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. My favorite scene, and no matter what, Samuel Jackson Avengers Initiative. Because then it's a great moment. That leads into they're gonna make more movies. There's gonna be more.
And how many people didn't see that scene?
Oh yeah, because that was before.
This is the first time we'd ever had a post-credit scene, and it literally was post-credits.
Yes.
Like this, there's some of them in the movies now. It's like they'll come in maybe 20 seconds after. They'll show like a few title cards, and then before they get to the full list of cast, they'll show like a little teaser scene. This was at the end of all the credits, and you get that moment where he walks in, and it's Samuel L. Jackson going, you think you're the only superhero in the world? Yeah.
Oh my God! It just even now it still gives me chills. Man.
And they recently just released an alternate take of that is going to show up on the Infinity Saga,
oh, really?
Blu-ray collector's edition, like where he actually references mutants and a wall crawler. So he's. Even at that stage, they didn't even have the rights to Spider-Man or the X-Men, but they filmed a take where Nick Fury was talking about it because they're always prepared. Obviously, they didn't go with that one, but that is a great scene. So you're 8 out of 10. I'm going to come in slightly higher than you. I'm going to go 8.2 out of 10. I didn't do that just because you said 8. I had that number in my brain. This is definitely it's a really, really good movie. Definitely on the upper tier, not only of MCU movies, but just of superhero movies in general. Like I said, if you're looking at anything that's an origin movie, I think it's hard to top this one.
Yeah, and I will give you that. I mean, being the Spider-Man fan, being the comic book fan, this literally hit it right on the head. Yeah. Nail got hit. It was a perfect smash. It's just all around. It's a solid movie. Yep. But I think they're always better.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be talking next about The Incredible Hulk, which came out 1 month later. So tune in for that video. Again, we're talking about all of the movies of the MCU. So 23 movies in total that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be releasing these movies. And so comment below what you liked, what you think about our thoughts on this movie. Does the movie still hold up to you? Do you love it? Subscribe to the channel.
Subscribe. Let us know. You know what? I also want to know what your rating is. Let me know what that is.
For sure. Drop that in the comments.
So out of 10, don't go past that. I know there's gonna be something 12. What?
Yeah.
There's 10.
Yeah, or somebody's gonna be like 4 out of 5, and we're like, so say 8 out of 10. All right.
We're gonna just do the math for you.
Do the fractions. We're out of 10. So, anyways, I'm Robert. This is Aaron. Get your geek on. We're excited to be talking about the MCU and excited to have you on this journey with us.